Welcome back to Natural AF. I'm your host, Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
And we want to wish you and your families all a happy new year.
Happy New Year!
Yeah.
I wish we had, I don't know what they're called, those things that you blow and the streamer comes out.
I want to say foghorns, but that's
not that big, no.
Oh.
Well, maybe just add in some sound effects so that we don't sound
Like the confetti.
Yeah.
This is a good time of year, but I never really know how to end a year. Like, do you, I think blowing stuff up is a great way to go. But other than that, I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, unlike your neck of the woods back home, we can't get fireworks here unless you know someone that knows someone.
The Lebanese.
But no, we've actually had a pretty quiet end to the year, which has been really nice because the last few months leading up to the end of the year were pretty hectic.
Yeah.
So it's actually been really nice to just take a step back. We had a pretty quiet Christmas and just reflecting on the year that's been. And, you know, I actually said to you yesterday, like the closer it's gotten to New Year's, the less and less I wanted to go out and do anything.
Right.
So we've decided to just stay home.
Yeah. And I feel like we've already,
nice, quiet one.
I think it's why I gel with you so well, but we both started on our New Year's resolutions before the New Year even started and before we even made a resolution.
Yeah, that's right.
You started a new fitness challenge.
Yeah. I'm not going to be able to walk tomorrow, guys. I did my first workout in 9 months yesterday. And actually just a quick follow-up on the last 2 episodes now, follow-up on the follow-up. Getting back into fitness, whoa, like I was actually blown away by how much my body's bounced back. And again, it was one of those things I didn't realize like how unwell I actually was, because the last time I worked out was kind of because of that I started to figure out that my breast implants were making me really sick. And when I was working out back in March of this year, like every workout was a struggle. I just felt more tired after I'd work out. And then like the weight, nothing was budging. And yesterday mind you, I'm almost 4 kilos lighter to start with. So that makes a big difference. But I actually felt like more energized after the workout than I did tired.
Yeah. Just an encouraging sign.
Yeah. And it was really awesome. I think I've actually kind of been avoiding getting back into fitness because I felt so disheartened from that last time that I tried to like follow a program. And now I'm actually like, oh, that's actually energizing me. And like I can feel every muscle in my thighs, and it's a struggle to like, I was like, I can't sit down. I can't it's really hard to get up. I can't walk down hills.
And that's after 2 applications of Alleviate on the legs.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how bad it would be without Alleviate.
Yeah. Well, the good news is it does help, in my experience, shorten the recovery time.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be limping around for 5 days, maybe 2.
Yeah.
You know, you'll be sore, but.
Yeah, I think you get that first couple of days is normal, and Alleviate just kind of helps to take the edge off, I feel.
And then once you get, let's say, 3-4 weeks deep into like a steady fitness routine, you're not going to be that sore after a really intense workout. It's just really dusting off the old muscles. The initial startup is hard.
Thank God for muscle memory, thank God that I was a gym junkie at one point in my life. It might have been a decade ago, but better that than nothing. So I know I'll get back into it. But I'm super pumped now. I'm like super pumped to like restart my fitness journey because it has been so long. Yeah. And it's a great start to the year before this year's even ended.
Yeah. And a lot of people, I mean, I hear it back and forth like, oh, I don't even do New Year's resolutions, or I write them down, or I mean, there's plenty of people that start them and stop them, but I still think goal setting at the beginning of the year is really important, especially if you want to take your life from where you are now to where you hope and wish you were, you know?
Yeah, well, I think it's just like the terminology, but right? Like, you know, New Year's resolution to me is like, it has this connotation of just starting it like in the new year, like in the start of the year. And I think that's why so many people don't follow through. But to set an intention for your year to come, I think is really important, because we did that last year.
Yeah. And plus we're at a new moon at this beginning of the year as well. And if you're into that kind of stuff, you know, lunar intentions, I don't know what you would call it, but
well, I mean, new moons
give it a shot.
New moons are all about new beginnings, and whatever it is that you're wanting to start is like one, setting the intention, and then the new moon is the time to start. And then coming up to the full moon so roughly 2 weeks following that is time for completion. It's not the time to start anything, but it's more like completing of things. Things might come to fruition, and things can also be, what's the word? Like the full moon illuminates things. So it could be things within yourself. It could be things that you're not wanting to see, like that kind of thing. So it's also a time to look at those things as they're being illuminated. And then we come back to the full moon a couple of weeks after that, and then that's the cycle. So it's really interesting that we're starting the new year on a new moon.
Yeah. Do you know what sign the new moon's in?
I actually don't. I didn't check, but
I always ask, but I don't know. It probably means something to other people. I just take it and just be like, oh, that's interesting. But
yeah, it's just more about the energy that it brings, like with what sign it's in.
Yeah, it's just a point of curiosity. But anyways, we'll leave that there and we'll get into introducing the episode. So this is a very interesting, very important topic, getting into the potential downside and pitfalls and darker side of psychedelic use and plant medicine.
Yeah.
In this episode, we interview our friend Daryl Spilberg, not related to the ominous Hollywood character.
No, it's not Spielberg, it's Spilberg.
Spielberg. Good, yeah. Not Spielberg.
Yeah, so I'm so grateful to Daryl for coming on.
He's a great guy.
And just sharing his story. Like, it's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's daunting what he went through.
Yeah, very, very. I was listening to it, and I was actually listening to it thinking, thank God I've never felt called to do this kind of medicine. And I think that's why, like, I think intuitively, I don't know, just hearing his experience, that stuff has always really freaked me out, like going into this altered state. And I think that's why too, because not knowing, like, you're doing it usually with like strangers.
Yeah.
For the most part, that's usually what you hear. You go and you meet the shaman for the first time, and then you're doing this thing with strangers. That's always kind of freaked me out, because then you're going into this altered state of consciousness and you don't know what's going to come up.
Yeah. So
I'm very grateful that I've actually not felt called to that, because I think after what Daryl said about the spirit of the plant, and what I won't spoil it, but after what he said about that, I can see now why you don't hear a lot of these quote unquote bad stories. What's the word? Not bad, but you don't hear these the damaging effects that it actually can have.
Right. Yeah, it brings up some very, very interesting points of view that I have not heard before. I've heard hints and glimmerings of different things from different people, but the way he breaks it down and the story that he tells, it's like opening the page and the story just jumps off the book from you or at you, and really lays it out there as to what this world entails. So I hope you enjoy that episode.
Yeah, I think you guys will. And this is definitely one, like, to share with people that you feel may have been affected by this kind of thing. Take a listen. And if you know anyone, because we know a few people that have probably been affected by like too many of these plant medicine ceremonies.
And we're not really, I'm not pro or con too much. I just think that being responsible with it includes due diligence. And due diligence is just looking at both sides. And intelligence is, I learned this from Robert Kiyosaki years ago, looking at, there's two sides of a coin, but intelligence is a third side, the edge. There's heads, tails, and the edge. There's a third side of the coin. So if you're going to approach something that is very, very powerful, do that with intelligence.
Yeah,
so,
approach it from the edge. I like it. We should coin that. Approach it from the edge.
Yes.
And sorry, just before we move on just to quickly address, you might hear that the audio just wasn't, I don't know what the right terminology is, but our audio.
We were lagging.
Yeah.
Someone was lagging and it was recording like a little bit of an overlap.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not too distracting. But.
Yeah. So there was a lag, and Daryl's audio just sounds a lot louder than ours, just like in the post-production we heard it, but like we didn't have an issue when we were recording, but unfortunately there's not much we can do about it, so just wanted to address that. Hopefully it's not too annoying.
Right. All right, well, as always, this episode and this entire show is self-sponsored by us and our business, Natural Art Form. You can check out all our offerings at naturalartform.com, and we are going into the new year with an intention of growing the online presence of this business, and would appreciate if you have a good experience, please share a picture or video review, and you will get a 20 or 30% discount, which is a pretty good savings on the product. And you can look at that at our website. At the bottom of each product, there's a little section and it says write a review. So you can post a review there and you can select what kind of review you want to get, and it will automatically send you the discount. And any review gets, I think, a 10% discount will be sent to you. But we're really looking for those photo reviews and video reviews if you're up for it. And
we love to hear people's stories. Like, that's the beauty of doing the markets, is that we get to interact with our customers face to face, and we get so many positive reviews and really great feedback from people that have bought it and then maybe come back a month later or a couple months later at the same market. And yeah, it's really great. Like, really, that's why we do this.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I love getting those messages from y'all. And even if you reach out on Instagram or wherever and send us a note there, or even a comment in one of these videos, I love seeing that. And it just goes to help support our mission and what we're doing, which is offering a natural, really like truly clean alternative to some common products that people use. So, like the pain relief product that I made, a topical anti-inflammatory, or deodorant here in Australia, and skin repair. So, and more to come in the future. So,
yeah. And if you haven't ordered online at all yet, and this also goes for anyone who may have bought from the markets, if you haven't ordered online, you'll still get 10% off your first online order using the code NaturalAF10.
Yep. Yeah. So plug that code in at checkout and you'll get the discount there.
And another way you can support us is liking this, subscribing to wherever you're listening or watching this episode, and sharing. Like we said, especially this particular topic, if you know anyone that you feel like may have been affected or just may find this really interesting, share the episode. It really does make a difference for us, especially with the algorithms and all that stuff that I don't really understand, but it does make a difference when you're engaging. And leave us a comment wherever you're listening or watching. We love the comments. We've had some people now leaving comments on the episodes, and we'd love to hear your feedback. So yeah.
And feel free, share opposing viewpoints. We just ask that everyone just stay respectful in the comments. And if you have an opposing viewpoint, it's fair to share both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. We never shy away from differing views, do we, babe?
No hesitation to be a little controversial.
Yeah, and I say that because Isaac and I share differing views on a lot of things, but it makes for great conversation.
Yeah. All right. Well, without any further ado, let's get into the episode.
Let's get into it. Daryl is a counsellor, crystal dreaming practitioner, and fanatical health enthusiast. He was always curious about how to live a healthy, sustainable lifestyle until he was abruptly plunged into a deep spiritual crisis that lasted many years. He had to rapidly adapt and explore many options to try and find his way back to mental, spiritual, and physical health. Through this journey, which he now recognizes as an initiation period, he was left to fend for himself for a long time until he was finally guided to various incredibly skilled practitioners who assisted him in finding ways to find balance. His journey back to health has been incredibly difficult, yet it was his health crisis that brought him the wisdom and knowledge of how to heal on many levels and ultimately come to a place to be able to help and assist others. He now knows that the seemingly impossible can be healed, and he's here to be of service to assist others through their own inner questioning, awakenings, complex spiritual issues, health crises, and anything else that may be perplexing them and holding them back from reaching their full potential. Thanks so much for being with us today, Daryl.
Yeah, welcome, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Great to be here.
Yeah. So very interesting journey you've had. So we always give you the floor when we start off to get to know you a little better and share a little bit more of your journey and sort of, the most significant life experiences that sort of led you to where you are today in the work that you're doing.
Yeah. Okay. So I suppose I used to be, just, going along as a lot of other people were and, just very typical life. I did a lot of travel, a lot of work. I went traveling for many years. I was gone for about 6.5 out of 10 years between 2008 to 2017. Just traveling around the world at that time, partying a lot. seeing a lot of amazing places. And it all kind of just like travel broadens the mind, and it just made me start to kind of, see different cultures and different experiences and meeting a lot of different people. It's just kind of just gently opening me up to some different things. And then around 2015, I started to just become more health conscious. I got a couple of messages to do so. I had no idea why. And then I went through the last bit of the travel. Was a really beautiful experience. I went over to the Middle East. I went through Egypt and Israel and Turkey and Jordan, and then 6 months in India, going to all sorts of amazing sacred places that I had absolutely no idea why or what I was doing. I was just getting led through them. And then 2017 was when it all kicked off. And I was thrown into a very, very deeply and abruptly thrown into a spiritual crisis. And it's been about 8 years since then, I suppose.
Wow.
Nice.
So can I just ask, Daryl, how would you explain a spiritual crisis? Like, what was that to you? But then if other people are unsure if that's what they're going through, how would you describe that?
Yep, sure. So spiritual crisis, I suppose at the core, it feels like a lot like an identity crisis where your entire world, your entire existence is just shattered. It completely falls away and shattered. So there's spiritual crisis and spiritual emergence. Crisis is when bang, crack, dynamite, you're in crisis mode. To varying degrees, but things are very abrupt, whereas emergence is a lot more, word that's coming to mind is gentle. It's not necessarily gentle, but it's more kind of slower pace,
like
more
gradual?
of inquiry, and things gradually kind of happen to you. Yeah, exactly. So
cool.
a lot of things can happen. It's a whole lot of things. A lot of, you can go into very deep depression, very deep questioning. You lose joy in the things that you used to. You find yourself distancing yourself from people that you used to. You find yourself very, very, very alone for a time, typically, because you've changed so rapidly. There aren't many people around you that can understand. Even if you do have some people who are quite sympathetic. I did have a couple at the time, but it's a lot of it's very unrelatable experiences, and then to the various different degrees as well. You can be very abruptly opened up to the voyances, so to seeing things, hearing things, feeling energies and things. You can be very abruptly opened up to that. You can start seeing and hearing, entities and voices and angelic beings, whatever it might be, which can be very, very, very confusing for people, especially if they don't really know or understand. And obviously, I don't need to say that that's something has been stigmatized a lot too. Basically, you're thrown into this hole, and you just got to figure it out yourself, basically, and you just don't know what to do. There's no, reader's manual to do X, Y, and Z to get out. You got to try and figure it out yourself, and there is no exact formula for one person's different things for different people.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. So, what was some of the, like you mentioned, you kind of, you came along the path of some pretty skilled practitioners that helped you through your crisis. So what were some of the things that you then explored that helped you to sort of heal and figure out what was going on and move through it?
Yeah, sure. So with me, my whole experience was kicked off by psychedelic damage. That's a whole very long story in itself, but and I didn't understand or know it for a time, and it took me a while to understand and come around to it. And then for a very long time, I was in, I suppose, what you call the dark night of the soul, and it was just very alone. And then I was just fighting for survival, really. Just going along. and you just kind of, sometimes you just, some people find that you're just in it for a while and there's just things you can do really. You've got to get yourself to a point
terrifying.
where you're ready to be helped. Yeah, you've got to get yourself to a point where you're ready to be helped as well, which is hard. I know that's hard to understand. And this isn't always the case, but a lot of the time you've got to have taken that initiative and taken those initial steps yourself. And then the first one, I was looking and trying all sorts of things for a long time. And I was very afraid to, because I had a very, very traumatic experience with the psychedelics, and I was very wary of, I was very programmed into it. I'm very wary of, I've been programmed not to seek anything else as well. So it was very hard for me to find other practitioners, but I finally ground my way out. And then the first thing that was, and still is to this day, the absolute life changer was crystal dreaming, of which I'm now a practitioner. And that was the first time. It was probably, I came to it about 1.5 years in or so, and then it still took me probably another 6 months. About another 6 months after that, I had my first kind of, I suppose, breakthrough, you'd say, and then it's moved along since then. Yeah, for me, that was the first thing that started to actually shift and change things.
Wow. How would you look at it looking hindsight now? Do you find that you have a place of gratitude for what happened, having brought you into like another level of just yourself?
Sometimes. Depends how I'm feeling on the day.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, there is. Look, I understand a lot of it now. I really understand a lot of it. I understand why it happened. A lot of it with me was very, very karmic. A lot of it was a part of the initiation period. I understand why it happened. I'm a lot more accepting of it now, but sometimes it's still very difficult. This human, it's like I can see the whole spiritual lessons go, okay, but then the human part of me is just like, yeah, but I'm still pissed off. So that can happen sometimes, but definitely come towards a place of gratitude. Yeah, I can understand it. And in time that does increase, what you're saying, I say. Yeah, I think in time it kind of, as you improve and heal more, then you're like, okay, well, the gratitude comes through more. Yeah.
But I love that you said that too. Like, there's this spiritual aspect where you can be more accepting, but then there's this human side of you that's like, yeah, I'm still really pissed off. Like, I love that, because that is the reality of most situations. We're not always going to be in absolute agreement or acceptance or whatever it may be about anything in particular. We do have these different parts of us that are going to express different feelings and emotions towards things. So, I love that you're just very real about that. So for anyone that doesn't know about crystal dreaming, because I didn't know about this until I met you, and we've got mutual friends that have done it and said that they had amazing experiences, and also, had experienced a similar thing with the, damage that psychedelics can do and having things attached to them. So can you go into crystal dreaming, and maybe if you want to even elaborate more on kind of what can happen with psychedelics and what kind of stuff it can open you up to?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Okay, so crystal dreaming, first of all, it was started by, or created, I should say, by a man by the name of a brilliant man by the name of Rain Richards. He created the modality, and basically it's a very intricately laid out crystal mandala. There's about 30 or sometimes 40, depending how much you expand it, crystals or so, laid out in like a line and then like a fan. So no crystals actually touch you. It's a no touch. No one's touching you. The crystals aren't touching you. And you lie down. It's always one-on-one. You lie down in crystal mandala, and it takes you into an altered state of consciousness. And then the practitioner is guiding you through the session, and then people are relaying what's happening back to the practitioner in their experience. So it's not a session where it's like, oh, the practitioner's like, I see this, I do that, I see that. It's all the client's experience. So like, it's so common that I'll have someone sit up after a session and they're just like, oh, and they're like, that really happened? And I say, well, I wasn't telling you anything that was going on. You were telling me. So did it happen? And they're like, oh, yeah, that's right. So anything can come up. Very common themes are attachments such as entities, demons, etc. People who haven't passed on properly, attaching to people. Past and present life trauma is also very, very common. And it can be a host of all sorts of other things. Nothing, it's one of those things like I'll be doing this the rest of my life. I'll still be seeing new things, like all different things come up for different people. It just brings up what's needed for the person. And then the idea is to clear out whatever it is that is having problems for them and holding them back, to be able to then help them move forward, and then ideally align them with the higher realms. So like the unconditionally loving beings that are waiting for them, that everyone has, divine guidance, finding out about their blueprint, their purpose on Earth, etc. You can ask questions, all these kinds of things. It can just bring up basically anything. The idea is anything not aligned with your divine highest good and unconditional love, move that out of the way so that you can get there to those things.
Wow, that's
Beautiful.
so interesting. Yeah, and I'm new to like all the crystals and stuff. Does it matter what kind of crystals? Is a lot of it quartz? And
Yes.
do you have any that you particularly like to use for certain reasons?
Yep. So yes, the layout is always the same. So the layout's very particular, it's always the same. There's a few that can be like expanded on, like there's a certain pattern, but then like, where there's 3 there, you can go to 5 there, or like that kind of thing, but it's always the same layout, and you can swap out the type. So like if that one's, that quartz point for that quartz point. There's ones that I get very attracted to. I try not to go into crystal shops too much because they all just start telling me to take them home. I really like all the quartz. I like the quartz, especially the ones with the patterns. So like there's like windows. There's like little windows on them. There's certain patterns that can make them more powerful. There can be like little memory records in them. There's all sorts of stuff on the quartz ones that can make them more powerful. But typically you've got a kit. You run with that, and then like I might find like one really special one and go, okay, cool, I'll swap that one out, or whatever it might be. But yeah, there's a few different types that are used in the kit.
Yeah. What I love about all this stuff is growing up, I was so interested in, because I grew up Christian, evangelical type stuff, but was curious, really into the demonic world, not just the demonic, but the angelic, the unseen. And I remember learning in Sunday school and throughout all the time in church that somewhere in the New Testament, someone said you should basically live your lives in a way that what is seen is not as important or as vast as what is unseen. And that we're not here to battle flesh and blood. We're here battling principalities and spiritual forces in high places. And it's pretty much like a blanket statement. It's like Jesus was a peacemaker. I love that he said that blessed be the peacemakers. And when he addressed people and he's doing all this demon casting out and all this stuff, I used to love just the little snippets that the Bible has about all that stuff. Now I feel like there's a lot more to the Bible than there is that most people are aware of. There's books that have been taken out and all this stuff. And there's a lot about this unseen world and this darker agenda and the light agenda and how we interface and what our true role is in it, and our interface and our ability to have a say in what's going on. And I think the most important first step is awareness. And yeah, thanks, I did a session with you, and that expanded my awareness again about how to be present. Well, basically how to tell if you've got some kind of entity mucking about. It's cool work.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's just so many different types of, there's so many different types of beings out there. It's like, because in the sessions, if they come up, you communicate with them. And it's just, there's a lot of different types and a lot of different beings. And underneath it all, just really try and have compassion and understanding for them as well, because at the end of the day, they're another being that's effectively lost their way and are in fear. Not always lost their way. You quite often lost their way, but they're in fear. They're fearful. So, and that's the thing. Really try and stay in that compassionate space to really try and get the best result for your clients.
Yeah, especially like Isaac said, the awareness, because I think one of the things that I've learned through my own experiences and realizing that I've had things attached to me is just being aware of the various ways in which things can attach to you. And like you said, there's so many different beings. It's not just about demonic entities. It's about, like you said, people that have died and not been able to move on, attaching like that actually, I think can be a big one for people, especially because we're moving out of this paradigm where I think
definitely,
the generations prior to us, that all they knew was the physical world. And I think it's very common that after, death, they're not actually passing over to where they're meant to be. They're very attached to this physical world still. And of course, they're likely to attach to the people that were in their life. So there's so many different, like you said, so many different beings and things that can be attached in different ways in which they can come in, like, you said with the psychedelics and that whole world. And we've looked a lot into that kind of thing, and it can be pretty wild. And I actually wanted to ask you to go into, if you can, a little bit more about how you said you were actually programmed not to seek help after that experience. How did you kind of become aware of that, even that was going on?
Trying to think of an answer that's not going to take the rest of our whole time.
Go as deep as you want, Daryl, because honestly, we find this stuff fascinating, and a lot of our listeners will. So go as deep as you want, take as much time as you want on that, honestly.
So I should say that's a very good question, Alexa. I should say it's not always the case. It was the case with me, and can sometimes be the case. But it's not always the case. So as you said correctly, very wild. When psychedelics, there are so many different variables and streams and just all sorts of things that can happen. And this is the thing. There is, like, I could just sit here and just rattle off that many things that go into, taking psychedelics or psychedelic ceremony or whatever it might be. If one of them's off, it can be quite damaging. And that's why it can actually be quite problematic. So one of the things that I usually say about it is that, people will go into a lot of these things and they'll be told of otherworldly experiences, instantaneous healing and amazing potential and all this kind of stuff like this. Now, I'm not denying that things like that can sometimes take place. However, my issue is that the other side of the coin is almost never spoken about. And there are a lot of people who leave shattered, damaged, all sorts of crazy energetic misalignments, have things attached to them, etc., all sorts of things. A lot of time they just have no idea, and then they might get a sentiment, oh, it's all medicine, or you got what you needed, which is just a cop out. to be honest with you.
Right.
And I meet people sometimes who are like, oh yeah, I had this ayahuasca ceremony 5 years ago and hardly slept since, but I got what I needed and all this. And I'm like, okay, so is that what you needed? 5 years of insomnia and nightmares? And it's just this sentiment, it's all medicine where, things can go very, very abruptly wrong with those. And it's something that I'm trying to bring awareness to. It happened on a massive level to me personally. And I think it's something that should be spoken about a bit more, because when you hear about people going through these things, it's the 95%, oh, it's amazing, it's this, it's this, it's this. In response to the second part of your question, so basically, when I went, my story is very, very complex. There's a lot of layers to it, but the long and short of it is I had some pre-existing issues and trauma and this kind of stuff like this, and then I started seeing a Chilean girl, a beautiful Chilean girl, and she said, "Oh, well, why don't you come and treat these things naturally? Come back, move to back to Chile with me, and we'll, take ayahuasca to help to heal this." And I had already spent about 2.5 years or so in South and Central America, so I was no stranger to it. I'd heard about it. I'd gone all through Peru, Bolivia, and and all this stuff, but it was never on my radar. And I went and so basically I went over there and I moved over to be with her, obviously, and then to have this as well. And I went like just way too deep, way too fast. And I went to very advanced levels of medicine as well. So there are other plants that you can use as well, called dietas, which you might have heard of. So it's basically you get another plant, you do like a 30-day kind of program, I suppose you say, a very restrictive program, and you're kind of downloading the essence of the plant into your system. And so there's all sorts of different ones, like there's one for concentration, there's one for fear, there's one for sexual cleansing, there's one for strengthening muscles, different issues you can pair with different plants and stuff like this. So I went way too deep, way too quickly. I got extremely abruptly cracked open, amongst other things. And for me personally, so when you're in those situations, in those ceremonies, you're in a extremely malleable state. So think of hypnosis times a few thousands, your channels wide open. And I was having things said to me. I was being taken outside sometimes and having things said to me that were, let's just say, not very helpful, and being programmed into me as well at that time. Now, I don't want to sit here and just this whole story and just sit like a victim. Like, I understand what happened to me. It was my choice to go in. It was my choice to keep going, etc. However, it's kind of like when you go into the duty of care of a practitioner, you kind of have a trust that they're kind of, there's a duty of care and responsibility in what you're doing. And so a lot of these things, some of the things were being programmed into me, you have more problems than anyone else. You can never seek another practitioner. You have to come and practice with us. And I really do think this was come from a place of, in a twisted way, love, but fearful love. Kind of like protective, like it's a dangerous, 95% of the world is evil. That's another one he said to me. And it was a way of just being like, it's really evil out there. You can't go outside. You know, it's you have to stick with us. You have to be with us. You have to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, and
Wow,
so
yeah.
that's the first part of that, and then the second part of that is the mother ayahuasca herself. She does not love me. She does not love me unconditionally. She absolutely doesn't. I've asked her point blank. Now, when you're there and you're taking the medicine, it's like almost like you're downloading an essence of them. It's becoming a part of you. It's like someone would ever say something bad about it. It's like that insulted my mother, and I just flip out. You know, and the deeper you go and the more you do it, the more it comes in, and it's that vine that wraps itself around the spine, and it'll suffocate you. And I wasn't aware of any of this stuff. And, you know, there was a massive arm wrestle for a very, very, very long time. And then I remember being in one crystal dreaming session. And then you're leading up to that. I couldn't say, like, at first I came back and I had all these issues. I had, you know, I was seeing and hearing things. I'm now healing from neurological damage. I had neurological damage, hearing loss. My energy body was fractured and split off into, I don't know how many different places. My chakras were ripped, my aura was cracked, it was moved off my body. Like, I can start to go on and on and on. And when I first got back, all I was saying is how it was the greatest thing. It was the most healing thing ever. You know, it was the most amazing thing. I had to somehow get back over there. And I was just kind of stuck in it for a while. And then just, you know, in my own devices. And then eventually I find it was like this arm wrestle. The awareness came, like, it kind of really started to turn a bit. And then in the crystal dreaming sessions, it started to come up and I started to realize what was happening. And then I remember there was one session where I'd worked, you know, I'd just been working. I had the breakthrough about 2 years in, and then this was about a year later. And I still remember I couldn't actually say anything really. I was struggling to say anything bad about the medicine. And it was like I had a gag over me, and it was just about 3 years later. It was over 3 years later. I could see what was happening. I'd already been through all this stuff. I'd come to crystal dreaming, but I couldn't quite vocalize it. And then there was this one session where a whole lot of stuff happened. And then, anyway, we were right at the end of the session, and my practitioner said, "Okay, is there anything else?" All of a sudden I was lying down and my hips just kicked up. I just went flying off the ground, basically, and I kicked straight up. And then just unwrapping from my spine was the mother ayahuasca. And she just stood up there in front of me, and she was pissed. She was so angry, I can't tell you, because I'd finally gotten to this point. And we just did the standard crystal dreaming thing. Whenever you come across a being, you could ask if it loves you unconditionally. Do you love me unconditionally? Let's just say I did not get yeses. And then I broke all contracts, all agreements, everything. And she was just really, really, really angry and annoyed at me. And could just feel that frame you there. And then about a week later, I think it was a week or two later, it wasn't long after, I was at a lunch, and I was standing around with 3 other people, and one of them had just come back from overseas, and she'd just done like a big, extensive, retreat with all this stuff. She's like, "Oh, it's the most amazing thing ever." And the other 2 guys are really into it. And they were like, "Oh yeah, you know," and the 3 of them were going on about how amazing it was. And I was just standing there. It's like, and then one of them was a good friend of mine. He's like, "Oh, you know, Daryl's done it before." She's like, "Oh, how was your experience?" And I just looked at her. I said, "Well, it was actually really damaging, and I wouldn't recommend for anyone to do it." And to this day, I'll never forget what I did. As soon as the words came out of my mouth, I went like this. And I looked over my shoulder because I didn't believe that they'd come. I thought someone else had said it because I didn't believe that they'd come out of my mouth. And because I had taken the essence out of my system, I could now speak freely. And since that day, I've been able to speak freely about my experience, but it was almost like it gagged me for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Holy
incredible.
smokes.
I got cold shivers listening to that. I actually felt a little sick when you were kind of talking about what was going on during the ceremony. But then when you said like it being released and you're releasing your conscience. Oh yeah, that's like it can be very, very dangerous if people don't know what they're doing. And that's the thing now. We're seeing this like rampant culture now of like every man and their dog, you know, they go and do one ayahuasca ceremony overseas and they're coming back to Australia and all of a sudden they're a shaman and they're facilitating these ceremonies and they are nowhere near in any way, shape or form qualified to do so. And it is very dangerous, I think, because, you know, you're starting to hear more and more these people that have done multiple ceremonies, and I'm not going to say just ayahuasca because it can be other plant medicines, but multiple ceremonies in very short amounts of time. Yeah, and they are very damaged.
Yeah, you touched a very good point, Alexa. You made a very good point. It's something that's not to be trifled with, and what I find, and this is a generalization, the numbers I'm about to say, but what I have kind of found is that I say, look, there might be about 10% of practitioners who are genuinely, let's say, dark shamans, let's just say. Like, they know what they're doing. They're in there. They're deliberately putting witchcraft on people. They're putting in hooks. They're draining energy. They know what they're doing. They're deliberately doing it like that, right? Then let's say that there's 10% of them that are genuinely really know what they're doing, hold the space. They've got all the things right. They know everything amazingly. They're holding the space. They're doing everything to the thing right. They know how to deal with their patients, etc. Somewhere in between there lies about 80% of well-intentioned people, usually quite well-intentioned people who don't know fully what they're doing, and they unfortunately can be as damaging as the lower 10% in quite some instances, because you're just not holding the space properly. All of a sudden, bang, something comes in, or whatever it might be, can be extremely damaging. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing it more and more. I mean, we were listening to a podcast with Christopher Gardiner, and he was talking about an experience he had where he was actually hearing frequencies. What was it? Was it the UN?
Yeah.
Or something like these very high up government agencies
Wow.
were, putting out these frequencies, because he's pretty tapped in. So he became aware, and I think he said that was the first time that he realized that this stuff was not to be messed with, because you just don't know what you're opening yourself up to.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I do. I mean, the idea of putting out broadcasts in other dimensional realms does make sense. Like, it sounds like something that the government would do if they wanted to affect the consciousness in a way that, whatever they want to do, or if they want to put out specific narratives and have people have these experiences and actually live it out as if it was 100% authentic. And that's essentially what was happening. Was he was near a UNESCO, United Nations, whatever the UNESCO acronym is, location in Costa Rica. And the UNESCO location was supposed to have protections. They built this massive radio antenna there on a UNESCO site, which is on a specific ley line, portal, whatever. And so he did his ceremonies in that region, and he was getting like these UNESCO broadcasts teaching people about aliens and whatever else he said. And then after the ceremony, people were talking to each other and to him, repeating back what he heard from that broadcast, but he was the only one aware that it was an outside broadcast. And I'm like, that opens up some very interesting conversations.
Yeah.
There's certain places that you just shouldn't go.
Yeah,
but that's it. It's like you said, there's certain places you shouldn't go, but if you've got no choice and you're seeing or you're hearing, like, this is the one thing, once you see something, it can't be unseen. And it's just, once you're in it. It's like, just hold on, I'll just shut the door on that. It's like, no, the door's open. You've got to work your way to start it again. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and what you said about being in a very, very suggestible state, totally. Yeah, I could totally imagine that.
Yeah, and so I wanted to ask, because my understanding of these plant medicine ceremonies is that, so one, you should be taking, the plant medicine should only ever be taken where it's grown and facilitated by the person who's growing it. And these shamans who, of my understanding, are usually, you know, like you said, that 10% that it's usually been passed through the generations. They know exactly what they're doing. They're very aware of all this stuff and they hold the space correctly. And then also that, I mean, traditionally, it was kind of like a rite of passage where you would do it maybe once, maybe twice throughout your life, and then that you should feel called to it. So these are just the things that I've heard through the grapevine. Because I've never felt called to do anything like that. I've never spoken to people specifically in that area of work or anything.
Is that the grapevine?
Sorry?
No, I was going to say, you heard that through the grapevine or the ayahuasca vine? Yeah.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So I'm just curious because, again, I don't know. I'm not by any means an expert in this whatsoever, but these are the kind of things that I've heard about how it should be done. So can you give some insight into that and whether you believe that it is something that is beneficial in some instances, or is it kind of like steer clear? What do you reckon?
Well, you raised some very good points. In terms of, there's very mixed opinions on, like, let's just say in theoretically talking from the pro perspective for a moment, there are various opinions on it. So in terms of taking it only where it's from, have heard that. It's just hardly the case anymore, just realistically with the world as expansive as it is and, people just traveling around. I've heard people having it, man, all over the place. People, ayahuasca in India and all sorts of ones in Africa and all sorts of things. I mean, that's a thing, like, for example, something like mushrooms, get them kind of anywhere. I suppose in terms of, I think you're kind of talking about the more like the sacred ones like ayahuasca and San Pedro and these kinds of things like that. I guess I don't really have the right to say, to be honest with you. There's a very big variance in opinion. It's certainly a lot more powerful. I did it in Chile. I also went to the Amazon. It's a lot more powerful when you're in the Amazon. It's nuts. So it's definitely a lot more powerful. But then in the Amazon, you find you can more commonly find witchcraft, to be completely honest. There's just a lot, and a lot of naive tourists, and not everyone, absolutely not everyone, but it's, it's just can just happen out there. Like I've heard all sorts of stories. So it's kind of hard to say. It has traveled so much. Like, what's actually interesting, a lot of people don't know is that, like, as you guys would know, it's very popular around Australia, especially East Coast, Northern Rivers, North Cairns and all that kind of stuff. So it's actually grown from the acacia. So it's grown here. It's one of the nicknames is Aussiewaska. Because it's, it's incredibly difficult, obviously, to bring all this, to cook this stuff, bring it over from the Amazon, fly to Chile, fly it over to Sydney, fly it over to whatever. Like, it's very hard to transport that kind of thing. So a lot of the time it's, it's something like that as well, or something like San Pedro is cactus. So that can be grown in, in various kinds of different places as well. So it's just become so diluted in the sense that it's just very accessible right around it's really hard to say. I guess a lot of it has to do with the practitioner. It really comes down a lot to the practitioner, and there's so many different things and how the medicine is made So even if it's not their medicine, they don't know how it's been done. It takes a long time to prepare these things, like sometimes days to prepare these things with the right intentions, the right everything, the right temperature, the right conditions, etc. If something's off with the medicine and they've just gone and collected it off someone, they could be holding a really tight space, but if the things aren't right in the medicine, and where is that space? Who's in that space? Are things the collected being held properly? Like there's just so many different varying different factors. To me, it's a real gamble. Like it's just, it's just a real gamble. Like if you go in and spin the roulette wheel, you might come out, put down $5, you might come out with $250, but you got 49 chances of losing.
Right.
It's not. I'm just generalizing there with an example, but I'm saying that that's one of the things with one of the things I like to say, with the potential for great breakthroughs comes the potential for great breakdowns. And anything that has this amazing life or, instantaneous healing kind of thing, quite often it can be quite erratic and it can go awry quite quickly too.
Wow.
Yeah, that's such a good point to make, because I think that's very true for a lot of things in the spirit world. If you don't know what you're doing, it can be a bit of a gamble. Absolutely.
That's it. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's the thing, like a lot of people just don't really fully know the extent of what they're going into again. And look, I understand that you don't want someone going into this space being like, oh, this and this and this and this and this can happen and this can happen. And they go in there like, oh shit. Going in like this really fearful state or something like that. But it's, people should know what they're up for and like what can potentially happen to some sort of degree. And it's it's quite rarely shared. Like a good look, I'm obviously a bit biased, but like a very good friend of mine rang me a couple of months ago, and he said, look, I'm going to feel like I've been called to I've been told I've been called to ayahuasca and all this. I was like, okay. He knows most of my story. I said, okay. He said, look, I'm calling you because you know more about it than anyone else I know. I said, okay. And he said, what can you tell me? I said, look, mate, I'm more than happy to share with you and go into it. But bear in mind that I'm coming from my own personal experience, which is obviously skewed one way. I'm not denying that. And B, when whatever I say, you're not going to be able to unhear. And then, he turned off. I was just, I wasn't sitting there like slagging off or anything. I was just talking about my own genuine experience, or saying this happened, this can happen, that can happen, etc. And it's already like a very complex and difficult space to go into. People should have the ideas behind it, of what's happening. And then the other question you asked, Alexa, people being called. To me, all I can say is that if they're being called to, for example, ayahuasca, they're being called by Mother Ayahuasca. And to me, in my experience and my understanding, she's not an unconditionally loving being. So I wouldn't answer personally. Anytime anyone's calling you to anything that big on such a deep spiritual level, you should always ask if they love you unconditionally. That's something that I really learned from Rain and from Crystal Dreaming. Beings that love you unconditionally, they are here looking after your divine highest good. They're here guiding you. They genuinely have no agenda. They only, with pure love and joy, want to see your absolute best result for you. And if anyone is any less than that on any level, I wouldn't go into anything that spiritually complex with them.
Right on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, we did lose you for a bit, Daryl, on our end. So I'm sorry if you already covered this, but I think people need to also understand too that they may feel quote unquote called, but what is it that you're feeling called by? Because these negative and demonic entities, for example, they're very deceptive. So they can make you think that it's your idea or it's a higher calling, it's something of the light, when it's really not.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep, I would agree with that. In some instances, people get called to all sorts of things. Yeah, to get like, why did I do that? Why did I have that idea? Yeah, you're very right. When people have these kinds of attachments, it can influence their behavior. And as you said, it can influence and give them thoughts and things. So yeah, that's a good point. I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah.
In some instances, sure.
Yeah. And I want to point out this reminds me of, it's an extra biblical text. It was taken out by the Vatican, century ago or more, but the Book of Enoch. And in that, at the beginning or throughout it, it describes this Enoch that had curiosity about all things, how the world works. I can identify with that. A lot of people can. Just, what is this tree? What is this bush? What are these lights in the sky? What do they mean? All this stuff. And in that, there's part of a history of these watcher class angels that had come down and made themselves as gods on Earth. And I liken that to like the stories of the Anunnaki, because the crossover is staggering when you start seeing the stories of the Anunnaki and what they did and what they gave to people, and then also the enslavement of some of the people that were here. And one of he names these different entities or quote unquote fallen angels or whoever they were. And I don't remember exactly which one. And this is beyond, the water boy, like, Bobby, that's the devil. Like, this is beyond all that. There is no quote unquote the devil. That's no one's name. No one is called that really. It's, it's a description of a behavior. And so there's these adversaries that were on Earth, and they put themselves up in a place of power. And they were the ones that it says specifically taught man the cutting of vines and the mixing of herbs and all kinds of witchcraft on that side. And I'm not sitting here to judge and say that doing ayahuasca is witchcraft, because I don't know. I don't know really fully how much of that text is actually preserved in this verbal record that was passed down and then turned into a written record passed down. But there's a lot of interesting crossovers. But this is, at the end of the day, this is these invisible entities. This is their realm. This is the water that they swim in. This is the air they breathe. And so when we're crossing over into that, we're very much out of our, I don't know if I would say very much out of our natural element, because I think part of us is this other side of the non-physical. We have this spiritual interface with it. We have the ability to work in that realm. But for whatever reason, the physical is more our jam.
And most people, I think, just don't have the awareness or the understanding of that role to be dealing in it. That's what I think the point you're trying to make.
Yeah,
that's what I agree. Because it's not everyone. Like, there are some people that are super tapped in and understand that, and I think they're very strong in those realms. But for the most part, I would say the majority of the population just aren't there yet. So I would tend to agree with that it's kind of not their domain, so to speak.
Yeah. You guys make a good point. Yeah. It's kind of like how space is held. Like, I remember it's so easy just in some of those ceremonies, which happened to me. You just meet this thing and all of a sudden it's coming back with you, and or you whatever it is, or if the space isn't held to a certain degree or whatever it might be, because when you're out in that space, it becomes a lot more, a lot easier for those things to happen. Like you're saying, like, you're out of the physical, you're in these altered states, and then it can stick with you and come back to you in the physical, and that's the problem. I absolutely know what you guys are saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now in terms of healing, because I mean, this is just so fascinating, and thank you so much for sharing your story, Daryl. I actually really think this is really important for people to hear, and actually hear these personal experiences where so much damage has been done, and then how long it can take. Like for you, it took you a couple of years to kind of heal and undo that damage. So I know obviously you've talked about the crystal dreaming a little, but in terms of like all the other stuff that you said, like you had like your aura was fractured and your chakras and everything was like out of whack energetically. Was it just the crystal dreaming that was able to bring that into balance, or did you do other modalities, or what was kind of the extent of healing that you had to do, and what was your process?
Good. Yeah. So, so first, just to clarify, it's been almost 8 years. I still haven't fully recovered from all of it yet. I've come a very long way. I've done a lot of really big things, a lot of really big healing things. I've come a very long way. But there still are some issues, almost 8 years later. First one was, there was two really, really big ones for me. Like I tried so many things. And first of all, I just like to preface it. There's no one thing for everyone. I'm not saying that everyone's going to go out and get crystal dreaming, get these amazing healings or whatever. There's different things for different people. For me personally, I tried, try and rattle off a few things. Kinesiology, a type of South American shamanism, tried Reiki. I tried, what else did I try? It's all sorts of different things. I tried a couple of different naturopaths. I tried a distant remote healer. I tried someone who specializes in repairing like drugs, psychedelics, alcohol. It didn't work. What else did I try? There was all sorts of things. A lot of them aren't coming to me now, but as I mentioned, that first couple of years, I was very like, I can't do anything. I can't go against the medicine. I can't. And then after that, I kind of started to look for different things. But periodically, crystal dreaming's always been the one that helped me the most. The second thing for me that's helped me the most, absolutely, for the last 4 years, I worked very closely with a phenomenal, I know this word, when people think of the word, it can be quite general. He's a naturopath, this guy's next level. He's been amazing in helping me just really clean out a lot of the crap in my body and help me ground back into my body. And just getting into a routine and, really just helping with a lot of the neurological stuff as well. It made a really big difference. And I barely slept for the first, what was it? Till I started seeing him, 2.5 years, I hardly slept. And then I started seeing him, and then within a week I was just out. And then,
amazing.
Those are the two really big things that have made a really big difference. And then the other thing is as well, I suppose that I was very, very much alone until that first breakthrough at the start of 2020, about 2.5 years in. I was very much alone, like just in my own hole, let's just call it. And then since then, I've started just having the right people around, people who understand me, people who don't judge. I have the most compassionate, understanding partner you could ever imagine. She's been unbelievable. She still is. Just having friends who, they might not even, like a lot of them, some of them, they don't even really believe in crystals or whatever. It's not all about that. It's just, we've got like common thread, and we just, finding the right people around as well. And that made a really big difference, as well, obviously. But in terms of modalities, crystal dreaming and the naturopath are the two really big ones that have really made a massive difference for me.
Yeah, and I love that you said like there's no one size fits all. We're massive advocates for that too, because we talk about a lot of, like, I'm a Psych K facilitator among, I've studied holistic nutrition and all these things, and we talk openly on this podcast about our experiences with certain modalities, but we always say that there is no one size fits all. You've got to work out what works best for you. So Psych K has been amazing for both Isaac and I, but for some people they might have a session and it doesn't really do much for them, and that's okay. But there might be other modalities that really work for them and whatever they need to work through. And I think that's always so important to reinforce to people, because I think people do kind of get stuck in, well, this person did this and they had an amazing experience, and that must be the answer. You got to go and do this, and it's just not always the case.
Yeah, completely right. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. There's no, that's the thing. There's no one way for everyone. Like, we're all this big mix of, reincarnations and different species of ET species and whatever it might be. And, there's no one thing fits all. For me, I have big affinity with Atlantis and with crystals. It was very, very highly impactful for me. What I love about crystal dreaming, it just cuts to the chase. You just get in there and you just get towards, if the person's ready, you can just really get to the root of the problem and solve it. Quite often in one session, there's no come back every 2 weeks for so long. It's just like, right, let's kind of get this sorted and then, go away and integrate. That's the ideal. So, it's definitely no one size fits all. And a lot of things, can help lots of different people for sure.
That's so cool. So in terms of when you're doing the crystal dreaming, and I experienced this where you're closing your eyes, you're kind of, the practitioner is leading you through, I guess you could describe it as like a guided meditation, visualization, and then just noticing and observing and seeing what comes up. And so when these things pop up and you see in your mind's eye, you see whatever needs to come up, whether it's images or a thought comes up or an emotion merges or even physical sensations come up. Is this something that, I don't even know how to break into this. Is this kind of the crux of how crystal dreaming works, where you're learning to communicate and notice what typically gets drowned out by when our eyes are open and we're seeing the physical world? There's a lot going on behind the scenes in the non-physical world, and you're basically touching that and then affecting change that then leaks into the physical world through your change in beliefs, your actions, your energetic attachments or whatever. Like, is this non-physical world the focus of crystal dreaming? Yeah,
good question. So in crystal dreaming, the brilliance about it is you're accessing your superconscious. So you're across all time, space. So you're going out there. So it might be a past life, it might be a present life, it might be, whatever it might be. You're accessing that information. So it's not this, what's just behind the iceberg or whatever. It could be just, infinite. And whatever it is, you've got access to that universal information, and you can just, deal with whatever you need to for you. In addition to that, it's different for different people. So some people come in just expecting like a movie picture. Like, that happens to me. I'm very clairvoyant. Where you lie down and it's all just like a movie picture running out through your your mind's eye, and that can happen. But different people have different senses as well. So there's the, clairaudience, claircognizance, the clairsentience, feeling. So whatever it is to help someone drop into that state, it doesn't matter. It's just so long as they're going into the altered state of consciousness, they have the access to the superconscious, and then you guide them into finding their way. And people usually find their way, like at first people can be like, it's a bit of an unnatural thing to a lot of people, and they're kind of like, oh, this is weird, or, you know, sometimes, oh, I'm not seeing anything. I'm like, you don't have to see anything. Tell me what you perceive. You know, you don't have to. If you blindfolded yourself on a like, let's say you stood on the side of the road, you blindfolded yourself, it would just heighten your other senses. You start feeling the wind, you'd start hearing the traffic, you would, you know, there's all these other things that can happen, and you'd be surprised. I mean, you know, trying to guide them, and they're like, oh, well, you know, I guess I don't know, I can feel a pulsing in my arm. Okay, great. So, you know, tell me more. And they're like, oh, it feels, oh, it's just an arm. Yeah, but I can't see anything. Okay, so tell me more. Oh, well, you know, it's, you know, what does it look like? What does it feel like? Well, there's a pulsing in my arm, and it's red, and, oh, it's the 1300s and someone's cut my arm off. I'm like, okay, here we go. You know, and then all of a sudden they're just like, oh, you know, they're just like had these, you know, they've just brought, because your body holds a cellular memory of all of your memories. So you can bring them back up, and then you can deal with them, and then clear the trauma or whatever it is, what's going on, whatever it might be. You know, like it's amazing how many times where it's just like, oh, you know, or I can feel this, like it's cold to my right. Like, okay, well, that doesn't mean anything. We'll feel into it. Feeling cold to my right, and, oh, there's someone standing there. It's like, okay, excellent. You know, there's different ways to perceive things. So it's not always like clairvoyance, the most famous one, obviously. Everyone thinks about this thing, but yeah, there can be lots of different ways to perceive things.
That's so cool. So I bring that up because this crosses over some interesting experiences that I've had, and I see a pattern. And I also want to address, because I have family that sometimes might pop in and listen to these episodes and go like, holy shit, they're talking about witchcraft and that's the devil. And like, I just reassure them, it's like, relax, but just be open and listen. Because let's see. So when I was dealing with my previous relationship, and Lexa and I have talked about this a bit on the show, but I was going through like marital counselor after marital counselor. And a friend of ours, someone I grew up in the church with, and I don't really go to church anymore. I haven't been for a long time because I feel like it's kind of on repeat, the same stories, the same kind of beliefs. There's no real expansion into any of these other realms, even though I know that there's a lot more there. It's very kind of like a closed system. And this is what you believe. As long as you just stay here, then that's everything you need to know. Everything else out there is like, it's very fear oriented and shame controlled. And I experienced that growing up, and, you know, whatever. But I look a bit at the bigger picture, and I'm like, there's still a good spirit. There's a good intention with a lot of it. But in one of the marital counselings that I did with this family friend person in the church that does Christian marital counseling, one of the like really powerful things that we did was what you described, but from like a Christian standpoint, but it's exactly the same way to interface. He had us close our eyes, and we're doing it through obviously just very basic Christian stuff, like pray to God, pray to Jesus, ask him this question, what do you see? Ask him this question, now what do you see? And so every question that we ask, I would get like a picture and an answer, an instant knowing. Like, okay, ask this question. What's the answer? Boom, instant knowing. And then you just basically say that back to him. And then you're just kind of exploring those inner depths in this one direction. But I'm like, that's exactly the same thing that I experienced with some of the body work with Yerasimos, doing the somatics. It's exactly it's the same thing that I experienced with you, and in a different way with crystal dreaming. And it's very, very helpful. It's, to me, one of the most profound ways to go about actually getting in, knowing yourself, and getting in touch with our eternal side, and seeing sort of the whole iceberg. Like you said, it's not just your higher consciousness. You're actually able to connect into like this vast, universal knowledge. This, you can describe it as the Akashic. There's just so much there. It's like a whole huge world of exploration, on par, greater than any westward physical exploration that anyone's ever done on Earth. It's like that times a billion, because it's so vast. It's like infinite. And it's fun and it's cool.
Sometimes.
Yeah. At least my experience anyway. I'm just like skipping through the daisies right now. I'm sure there's going to be a time where I'm just like confronted with something. But
yeah, no, yeah, no, you're completely right, and that's it. When you access this, you can get unbelievable answers and time travels and all sorts of stuff like this. You can get. I mean, obviously in the sessions, you're trying to deal with whatever is most apparent and blocking you, kind of thing. But when you get clear enough, you can start to ask broader questions, and it really gives you a really good perspective on why we're here, why planet's in the state that it's in, whatever, these kinds of things, different timelines and all sorts of things. Yeah. Definitely. And other world, like, ETs, otherworldly, all this kind of stuff like this. It can just really expand the consciousness. Definitely. And and there are various modalities. There's various good modalities. We're saying not one for everyone, but there's various good modalities that can really do that out there. And the main thing is that it's done in, like a safe, competent and, beneficial manner. That's the thing, because there's ways to go out there and then some people get stuck out there, like I'm sure you guys have heard the term like bad trip, and people are just still pieces of them just stuck out there, and you got to try and, it's not like just, sweeping something up. It can be very difficult to piece back together, but there's a lot of really good ways to do that. And there's, it's infinite out there. Yeah. What there is to hope.
Yeah. And it just reminded me too, like when you said, I was like, yeah, it's really cool. It could be really fun. You're like, yeah, sometimes, but I think it's also really important to point out here, because we're big believers in this, is that God will never, I truly believe this wholeheartedly, that God will never give you anything that you can't handle, and that's why we all have such individual, unique experiences, because like for you, like you telling your story and what happened to you, like just listening to that, I felt physically ill. Like I don't think I would have handled that. And I don't know where I would have ended up had that happened to me. Because I'm a very different person to you. And I also believe that those experiences, when we move through them and we heal from them, like we said in your intro, I believe they can be our greatest lessons that then turn into our service to others. And I think that's such a gift. It ends up being like some of the biggest burdens that we carry or have carried can turn into our greatest gifts. And I just think it's really important to point that out, especially for anyone currently going through something where you're just like, why is this happening? And, I just think it can be a really beautiful thing in the end, but also it's okay to not fully accept it. Like you said, like there's part of you that's like accepting of it and grateful for it, but there's part of you that's like, what the fuck, and that's very normal. That's very, very real. That's just who we are as human beings.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Completely right. Yeah. One of the common sentiments in spiritual crisis is nothing like this has ever happened to anyone before. Why is this happening to me? And in a way, they're right, because everyone it's unique. It's happening to you. This has only happened to you. It's uniquely happened to you. But other people have been in crisis, and usually when you plunge into that crisis, you're so alone because you're just detached and like, even if there's people around, they just don't get you. You can't tell them that they don't want to hear it. They don't understand. They might think you're gone loopy, like whatever it might be. Like you just gotta, when you're stuck in crisis, one of the really hard things is to be alone. Because in this day and age, let's face it, we're so often distracted that we're not, left to our own devices kind of thing. But that's it. Like it's like you said, people are given challenges that they're up for. And before you incarnate, I read an article on this, I think in October. I write a monthly paper column. I think in October I was talking about soul contracts. You before you incarnate, you sit up should I say out there somewhere, and you kind of line up your life plan. And it's there's these contracts, and a lot of them have to do with people that you meet, obviously, but a lot of them are experiences and things that happen to you as well, and you line them up and you kind of go through it. And a lot of them are nasty, let's be honest, like, because that's where heart disease, a lot of the growth comes from that. And so you go through, you're contracted to do a lot of these things. And like with me, I can see it's very karmic. A lot of it was coming back to me from past lives and things like this. And then, and then you, like you said, you can try and get through it and then get out and try and help other people disentangle as well.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up too about the soul contracts, because it's actually something Isaac and I have spoken about a lot, because Isaac's like, I don't know if I believe that. Like, why would anyone, say, so for example, because we've had Rachel Vaughan on, and what a beautiful soul she is, and the story, like what she's been through, and again, turning that into such a gift in what she shares in the world now. People often say, like, who would ever make a contract to come into this world and go through that? But my belief is that I don't think in our soul contracts, I don't think we ask for specific experiences in the sense of, I want to come here and I want to have, I want to be sexually molested as a child and blah, blah. I don't think it's like that. I think we come in with the intention of, I want to be able to help the world, and I want to experience connecting with others and building them up to what they need to be. Now, how we get there, I think that's part of the life experience that isn't necessarily planned for. And you might disagree, or you might be able to explain it in a better way. But I think the way we get to those intentions and those contracts may play out in a certain way that we don't really know how it's going to turn out. So I don't know if you agree with that, but that's kind of my understanding of it and what I feel resonates for me. I've always said, like, I've always been a bit of a hopeless romantic, and I've always desired a very deep, loving connection with someone, with a partner. And I think I found that now in Isaac. But again, it's like what I had to go through to finally get that, to know what that was and to know what that is. That was all the life experience I had before. So feel free to elaborate. If you disagree with me on anything, like, tell me what your understanding of that is.
Sure. So I think it can be both. Like, to be honest, there's a lot of very specifics, like a lot of really major life events. I'm not going to say always, but quite often contracted, like anything really big, significant, impactful, not always, but quite often contracted. Really big people in your life, like, like someone like you two, for each other kind of thing. Like you're, if you've got a relationship and you're with that person for 20 years or for the rest of your life, something like that, it might be. Sometimes, I've seen, I read about in that article where people's soulmates are the single most irritating negative influence in their life. And they love them so much that they become a nightmare, an absolute nightmare for that person. And they make their life terrible to try and push them to kind of, try and kind of get there. But a lot of it is, you've got your, everyone comes in with the blueprint. So your divine blueprint's like basically why you've got, like, let's say an end game, like an end goal, like you've got this, whatever, everyone's can be different, can be whatever it is. You got this, you came here this time to do that. I'm not going to say it's this simple one thing, but whatever it is. And then there's a lot of things that you got to do along the way to get there. And it'll take you like your whole life to kind of get there, to achieve your blueprint. Ideally, achieve your blueprint and goodbye, don't come back. Like remove yourself from the cycle of samsara, or what it may be. So this is a very, very, very unique time that we are in right now. It is incredibly, as far as I understand, there's never, ever been an opportunity like there is right now in the way that the earth is ascending currently. A lot of people know it. I've definitely spoken to you guys a little bit about it before. The earth's going to amazing places, and I say it to some people and they're just like, oh, what are you talking about? It's, it's so dangerous, and there's this, and there's World War III, and there's that in America, and there's that politician got in, and all this and this and this. And It looks crazy, but I personally believe that going in a very, very heavy positive trajectory, and there's going to be some bumps along the way, but planet is going towards a very positive place in in the next kind of 10, 20 years. And a lot of that has to do with a lot of these contracts coming up and people being forced to work into these situations where they're forced into work, having a health breakdown or having a relationship breakdown or having a work breakdown or whatever it is. They're kind of being pushed into these things, and a lot of people are dealing with a lot of their things and a lot of their contracts at the moment. So I got a little bit off track there, Alexa. So getting back to what you're saying, so I start getting excited when we start talking about ascension. When talking about like the major contracts and major events, I think a lot of them are not always. I'll say sometimes they're karmic as well. They can be quite karmic, whereas like you've done something and then you come around, learn your lesson, heal from it, help others, etc. But a lot of these things that can be really, really hard to see. Like I've looked through a lot of this stuff the last 8 years. I've looked at a lot of my past lives. Some of them were really nasty. I'm not going to lie. They were really hard to look at. I was like, oh man, I was a real prick. That's the bottom line, I did some pretty bad things in past lives, and that's that. It's about accepting it, about, trying to forgive yourself, which is probably the hardest. It's the hardest person to forgive is yourself. And then, learning and, building on the good experiences and then just saying like, right, this is the one where I clear it out and I'm going to actually move forward. And so you can use a lot of these these contracts and these things and these experiences to build on. And that's the thing as well. One of the most important things to remember is that just as contracts are made, contracts can be broken. And never forget that, because we all are infinitely powerful beings of light, and we have the ability to create as well. And so contracts are quite common in crystal dreaming as well. I've torn up some of the biggest contracts you could ever imagine. And it's like I've gone through it, activated it, understood it, right, that's it, I'm done. So you have the right to make a choice, because being down here on this planet in this duality, it is as difficult as it is a lot of the time. You have the amazing opportunity and experience to be able to create and to move into that duality and to be that creator and to actually shift around what it is and manifest what it is that you want for your life as well. So this is the thing for these people, people can be so dark deep down the hole, and I've been there. I've been in situations that were completely inconceivably impossible to get out of. And you just hold on, and there will be a way out. Just try and maintain your discipline and hold on. And, more often than not, you take the discipline, you hold on, but you can create the way out. And then even if these cycles and all these things, because something that might be happening to you might have happened over many, 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 many lifetimes, and you can break that pattern and you can start a new one as well. So there is hope.
That's really good to hear. Yeah, I struggled with the idea of karma, for one, coming from my background. I'm like, oh, that sounds like hippie new age stuff. But then I realized like New Jersey exists. And so I was like, yeah, karma. And the soul contracts and that idea, I'm just kidding. If we have any listeners in New Jersey, it's like, get out now. But
what have you got against New Jersey?
In America, we just like to poke fun at New Jersey. Yeah. It's below New York, and like that's just kind of where like the river, all the trash goes out there.
Wasn't it like 3 nights ago they had the UFOs flying over New Jersey? I think that was Jersey, 3 days ago or something.
I didn't hear about that.
It was UFOs flying.
There you go. See?
All right. Get ready for ascension, guys.
Apparently.
All right. Yeah, and then the past life stuff. I realized this, like, it's in the Bible too. So for people that are listening that are of a Christian persuasion, John the Baptist is essentially Enoch reincarnated in the Bible, for people that are familiar with that story. And Jesus talks about reincarnation, being born again, like that's part of it. I know there's debate on either side. Doesn't really matter. But I think for sure as well, there's a genetic memory, and there's like really powerful ways to go about this. And when I say like I'm excited and I'm like, yeah, this is so cool, it's because I'm coming from a point of realizing that the unconditional love that you and I talked about in the session with Crystal Dreaming, when you interface or you talk to these entities and you're like, do you love me unconditionally? They say yes or no. You return them to beings that love them unconditionally. And there's a protection and a power around that. And it's just true. Like that love really is more powerful. And to stay anchored in that is very, very empowering for anybody that's gone through a harrowing journey of just being damaged and wounded. And it's love really is the answer. Not to sound cliche, but it's just a truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you nailed it there. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, like people don't, like I've had a couple of I want to say discussions with people on things like that. And as I mentioned before, they are beings that are in fear, and to come from love and from compassion and to try and help them move towards the light and to move them on their way, win-win. They move on to the light, your client's freed of them. Win-win. Everybody wins. Whereas I know there's other things where it's like cast them out, fight them. All of a sudden you start poking the bear, it gets more angry and more agitated, or you might get it off your client, and then, a couple of things might happen. They might walk out of the session, bang, it comes back, or it'll just float over and just attach to someone else. So you might as well, do your part in just in helping and freeing, and that's it. Like, because a lot of them, they're really angry and they really feel no one's spoken to them for, how long. You start a dialogue, they're like, oh, hold on, this person's talking to me, and they're not actually aggressive. And wait a minute, and a lot of them have just lost their way. Like you talked about the fallen angels and things like that. A lot of them just lost their way. And if you can, just with anyone, if you can help anyone, it's a win-win. You brought up a really important point there. Absolutely.
Yeah. And your point about the forgiveness is so powerful too. And it's true. Like forgiving yourself is sometimes the hardest, and I've had that like in my conscious in this present life, where I've made some really awful mistakes and said and done some awful things and hurt people. And I just didn't understand that. And then, forgiving myself for that and moving forward can be challenging, but that's the path we go. That's the work. This internal work is, it's not always easy. Yeah.
Completely. I find, that's one of the hardest ones, self-forgiveness. So often I'll be in a session, like my own session. It's like this person killed you back then. It's like, oh yeah, I forgive you, no problems, all good. It's all right. I forgive you. You do the thing. That person burnt down your home. Did this? Yeah. I understand. It's like, now can you forgive yourself? I'm like, oh, hold on. It was starting to become really difficult. Yeah. It's definitely one of the tougher ones.
Yeah. But I think when you were answering earlier and you're like, oh, I kind of went a bit off track there. I get really excited talking about ascension. I'm just like, I love it. Like you're speaking our language, and again, our chat with Rachel Vaughan was very much about that. Totally. And I think that's why, as you were saying that, I just could feel this resonance in my heart, because that lots of people in these communities and that are pretty spiritually tapped in and understand that stuff are saying the same thing, that we are moving through into a pretty amazing time. And like you said, there's going to be road bumps along the way. We can't just like cut off and be like, oh, it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows now. There is going to be this transitional period that we're going through, where unfortunately, a lot of the darkness and ugliness is really going to come up, and we're seeing that. We're really seeing that. I think people are seeing it in their personal relationships. We're seeing it on a collective level, like a global level. And that's just a necessary part of it. It's like the internal work. It's like when you do this work and you want to heal, it's going to be hard. Like you have to go through that. It is a rite of passage. It is the passage to get to that, to get to the other side, to get to that ascension, so to speak. And yeah, like I said, you're speaking our language. We're totally on board. And I mean, what a time to be alive, right?
Definitely interesting. Yeah. It's and it's particularly intense now. We're December 2024. This is it's kind of been building up, and we're getting towards like a certain peak at the moment, and it's getting it's getting really interesting, and it is really intense out there. Definitely. But yeah, you're right. That's it. A lot of things are gonna come to light. Some of them are gonna be very difficult to look at. And it's just the way it is. And over time, I think we're going to come to a big realization of of what we've all done. And I mean, this is the thing, like we've contributed, a lot of us, not everyone, but a lot of us contributed things over thousands of years, and they'll like I said before, like I've done a lot of really nasty things. I've done some really good things in the past as well. And it's like, all right, well, what can I do now? And how can I just clear this up, clear up the karma, and just, in my own way, just try and whatever you can, just try and help the planet move forward, basically. And that's one of the best things. You don't have to be some huge, superstar. You're saving thousands and thousands of people. You just people are just important, and just walking down the street and being kind to people, and just being loving and charitable, and just going about your work and going about your day, and bringing up your family, right, and just helping people where you can. Like we're all playing our part. We're all contracted to play our certain parts as well. And it's all. I know it looks really, depending what you look at, it can look very murky and catastrophic at the moment. However, it's I believe it's really heading in the right direction, and there's some really good things coming. So yeah.
100%. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Daryl. I love this conversation. We talk about spirituality a lot on this podcast, but from many different aspects. And I think this is a really important conversation to have, and very important for people to hear, someone like you and your story and the work that you're doing now. And again, we also do it from the perspective, like with how Isaac grew up, that, he likes to bring in the Christian aspect, because there are some people that, spirituality is so individual, and we come to it in very different ways. Some people it's through religion, some people it's a way more personal experience. And we want people from all walks of life to be open to these kinds of conversations, and being able to make their own mind up about these particular topics. So thank you so much for coming on. And for anyone that wants to look you up and work with you, do you work with people online at all, or is it just in person?
Not at the moment. So at the moment, at the moment I crystal dreaming sessions are in person. With counselling, I can't remember if I mentioned at the start, I'm a certified counsellor as well. I can speak to people remotely by counselling, but crystal dreaming in person. But if anyone wants to get in touch, it's crystallineclarity.com.au. So crystal line, so 2 L's. And then there's some more info on what we've spoken about today. And any questions, just send me an email or give me a call. And and thanks for having me, guys, and thanks for doing what you do. It's really important to to get the information out there, and shows like this are awesome. It's the best way to do it and to spread it. So thank you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we'll have all your we'll put that your link to the website in the show notes, so people can easily get in touch with you.
Right. Well,
Great.
Good chat, brother. We'll catch you around the block here and probably see you at the markets.
Yeah.
That's good.
Wow.
What do you think?
That was I honestly, guys, I was not kidding. I felt sick, like at times when Daryl was telling his story, like when people were taking him out when he was in this altered state and like telling him certain things, like I felt physically sick. I feel sick just thinking about it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very dangerous, very, very dangerous what these people are doing.
Yeah. And, there's a part of me that's like, well, if you had the right people, and let's say you do, because you're in a highly suggestible state, as you said, I'm like, well, you could probably hack that and use it for good, but it's really not necessary to do it that way. If you want to um, unleash your true potential, you don't need ayahuasca for it, in my opinion. I know plenty of people that have done it and have gone on to, lead normal lives and have good things happen to them and all that. But yeah, it's just the risk benefit analysis is like,
yeah, well, and I think it's an important point to make, because even if you're in the right environment, you don't know what's going to come up for you. And I think, again, this is why like inner healing is so important. I think it's a really important point to make, that to do your healing and your inner work, especially if you've got any pretty significant childhood trauma, it's so important to deal with that stuff. I think, just in general anyway, but especially if you're going to go and do something like this, like even if you're in the quote unquote right environment and you've got the right people there facilitating and whatever, you don't know what's going to come up for you. And I think that's one of the things that always kind of scared me when I was younger in terms of psychedelics. And I didn't even know what ayahuasca was back then, but even just with like acid and like those more, mushrooms and those more trippy drugs, like, cause I suffered with depression for like all through my teen years, it scared the shit out of me because I didn't know what would come up for me when I was in that state. So I just like always steered clear, and thank God, because honestly, like, I wouldn't be surprised if I went into a full-blown psychosis from doing drugs like that. So I think it's just something to be mindful of. And and again, with any, because this, like when I shared my cousin's experience, this can happen with heavy marijuana use. And a lot of people, especially up our ways, it's just a plant. And, like you said, these plants have their own consciousness, and we don't always know what that consciousness entails.
Yeah. And the altered states, they can be unpredictable. What you feel in your body might be one thing, like you might feel really good. And I think that can be misleading because, and this is just my personal experience, but I remember maybe the second time I didn't do a heavy mushroom dose, but it was microdosing, and I went a little bit beyond microdosing, just a little bit, to where I could feel the sensations in my body a bit. But I got a very obvious sense that this thing is alive, and you can't argue with that. Mushrooms are alive, but it has its own spirit, and the spirit was mischievous and a little bit freaky. Like it was like, yeah, let's like strip naked and go run in the woods. It was like the things that you feel like doing on it. I'm like, yeah, like it's fun. It can be harmless, but you're stepping into something that it can be a little unpredictable and might have, repercussions that might be benign, or, someone might have photos on you afterwards of, blackmail of you holding a pumpkin without a shirt on and looking sultrily into a camera.
Which it's a true story, guys. Except you willingly sent the photos over, and now I've got that over.
Yeah, and it's okay to be silly and have fun and all this stuff, but it's like, it really is important to keep our faculties about us and not be sober and boring and dumb all the time. But you really, like, I remember growing up, we grew up super Christian, whatever, no drugs, and it was just kind of talked about like, I don't need alcohol to have a good time. And it was kind of from a place of truth, I think. Some of it was a little bit of like, just keeping kids in line and trying to make it sound fun to not get drunk. Getting drunk can be fun, but we do really have a lot of fun without drugs or alcohol, and we enjoy life. We don't feel like we're missing out on anything. We have had so many instances of spiritual advancement and rebirth and healing and all this stuff using things like Psych K, emotion code, these other, even just sitting in meditation or.
Well, when you've worked with Daryl, you had a session with Daryl, and
Yeah.
I've had like energetic clearings and things like that. And yeah, you can do all this stuff completely sober. It's entirely possible. And I would argue, and again, I don't have experience using plant medicines in a, either ceremonially or in a therapeutic space, because now they're doing that with marijuana, with, or like cannabis, MDMA. There's another one that they're now using.
Yeah. And I don't have anything against that.
Ketamine therapy. So they're using these things now, and I'm sure that there's a therapeutic use for them. But I would argue that I would say it's more powerful to just do it yourself, like just completely sober, because again, there is this element of outsourcing where I need the thing to get to where I want to go. I need the thing to heal. I need the thing to get to where I want to be.
Yeah.
And I just don't believe that's the case.
Yeah. And this is a really important topic or a piece to it that I heard. I heard it originally from Owen Benjamin when he was talking about HGH and steroids and people that use chemicals to enhance their body to be stronger, to look younger when they're older. And he brought up the term, I think he coined the term biological usury. Usury is debt. And it's the same thing as using a credit card and getting what you want now, even though you don't have the money for it. I think it's a similar principle with these psychedelics where, yes, you can tap in, you can get, some kind of spiritual advancement or something can happen, but it's like using a credit card.
That's such a good way to put it, because I think there's like an energetic exchange where, you've almost got to give something up to use that certain thing. It's a really good point to make.
Yeah, it can be Faustian. The next thing you know, you're freaking growing your hair out, changing your name to, Sierra or whatever.
Yeah, and I think too, like just in this day and age, like we're coming into this more of an understanding of the realm that we live in and how everything's energy. But I see that as like we're really just at our infancy with that. And so again, I just think when we're dealing with these different realms and energy and spirit and all these things, we don't 100% know what we're dealing with most of the time. Yes, there are exceptions to that. There are people that are super tapped in. There are people that have been doing this stuff for years. But for the average person, I would say we don't always know what we're dealing with. So I would always err on the side of caution with this stuff.
Yeah. And I don't know. Like, I think I'm kind of, I don't know what the word is. I don't know if it's jaded or whatever, but I've known people that have done a numerous amount of ayahuasca ceremonies and their personality is still shit. Like, they're still have blinders. They still have the same kind of, behavioral patterns that cause problems in relationships and have trouble, communicating or whatever the issue is. It's like, it doesn't solve your problems. It doesn't solve all of them.
Yeah.
And I would say, in my experience with the people that I've known, it actually brings some problems that you didn't have before.
Yeah. But it's just very interesting too with what Daryl said about how it, like this spirit was kind of, he felt gagged, and it's really that just like, I was like, wow, I actually don't think I've ever met someone that's done it and not said that they had a good experience.
Yeah.
And that's what's really interesting, because like the people that I know that have been pretty damaged by this stuff, they don't ever speak badly of their experiences. However, they can't get in relationships. They're very stuck in their life. They're very unable to move forward. So it's just really interesting to witness it like from the other side. But then there's this part of like where they can't speak ill of the plant.
It makes sense, because the way he talked about it being bound by it, like wrapped around his spine, it is vines are binding.
Yeah.
Very
cool.
Interesting. Tarzan swings from them. But beyond that, it's like, I don't want a vine energetically wrapped around any part of me.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's like, you don't want Tarzan on your back, like the monkey on your back. You don't want Tarzan swinging around the vine on your back.
Oh, God. Yeah. But anyways, if you have any different experiences, I'm open to hearing it. You can leave a comment in the comment section, share this, open this up, and I'm open for debate. I don't know enough to debate anyone, but I want to hear countering opinions, because if there was a massive turnaround for you or someone you know, that's cool. And if there is something where you're just like, yeah, I had this crazy experience and I don't know how to talk about it because everyone else says it's great. You know, I want to hear those too, because
yeah, absolutely.
it's important to give that a voice as well.
Yeah, totally. Well, we hope you enjoyed the episode and we will catch you on the next one.
Yep. See you later.
Bye, guys.